Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for FIDF's Yom HaShoah veGvura, Holocaust and Heroism Remembrance Day commemoration event. My name is Zahava Vidal, and I am part of FIDF team in Israel. Traditionally, during this time, we are leading FIDF's From Holocaust to Independence mission, which provides a journey from the bustling and vibrant Jewish communities to the Jewish people's darkest days, to their ultimate triumph, celebrating a flourishing Israel. This journey to Poland and Israel is done with a large group of FIDF supporters alongside Holocaust survivors and IDF officers who are Israel's bravest protectors and defenders. Our special program today remembers and honors the 6 million Jews, among them 1.5 million children murdered by the Nazis and their collaborators. We also remember and honor the righteous Gentiles who risked their own life and the life of their families in order to save those of their Jewish neighbors. We pay tribute to those Jews who survived the greatest atrocities of modern-day humanity and somehow found the strength to build strong lives and strong families, many of whom have dedicated their lives to ensuring the world never forgets. For this same reason, we come together today to remember and to honor. 3 times a year, a siren wails throughout of Israel, calling every single person to instantly stop what they are doing, and the entire country comes to a complete standstill. These sirens sounded twice on Yom HaZikaron, Israel Memorial Day, and once on Yom HaShoah veGvura, brings together the entire nation for 2 minutes of silence, of solemn observation of those who lost their lives. Please rise for a moment of silence, and this siren will be heard here, as it is in Israel, in memory of the 6 million lives lost in the Holocaust. Please welcome the IDF Chief Cantor, Lieutenant Colonel Shai Abramson, to sing Ha'ayara Bo'eret, Our Town is Burning, written in 1938 by Polish Jewish poet Mordechai Gebirtig, who was murdered by the Nazis in 1942.
הנה גדול והתקדש שמי רבה שרפה אחים שרפה עיירתנו בוערה כולה.
המחנה היה לסמל השואה.
ברוחות שחורות יסערו, להבות חורבן יבערו, עקבותיה לא נשארו, היא עולה באש. ואתם חובקים ידיים בלי הושיט עזרה, בלי כבות את אש עליו, אש העיירה. Es brennt, Brüderlach, es brennt, unser Arm steht nebens brennt. Böse Winden mit ihren Gossen reichen, brechen und zerblasen, stärker noch die wilde Flammen, als herum schon brennt. Und steht und guckt, also sich mit verlegter Hand. Und steht und guckt, also sich unser Städte brennt. Es brennt.
Shai, thank you so much for that most beautiful and moving performance. Now please welcome FIDF National President Bobby Cohen.
The 25th anniversary of the liberation of the concentration camps and the end of World War II. And as all of us honor Yom HaShoah, I'm honored to say a few words about my experience with the several Poland-Israeli missions that General Cliffy, Peter, and I have led over these past 5 years. In these missions, we're honored to always have 2 Holocaust survivors, 2 Israeli generals, 50 to 100 brave Israeli soldiers, and buses filled with supporters of FIDF. From our base in Krakow, we first become immersed in the tragedies of the Holocaust with visits to a town called Tarnow, a one-time flourishing Jewish town, now devoid of Jews. Then on to a horrific site where over 800 Jewish children were murdered, and then on to Auschwitz-Birkenau, where our precious survivors, like the amazing Brunia and others, tell their stories, and actually told their stories from their barracks that they were in when they were in Birkenau. Brunia to this day is my hero, the bravest person that I've ever known, and without a doubt the most beautiful, by far the most beautiful. On a personal note, as our group marched from the front gate of Birkenau, that most of you, I'm sure all of you are familiar with, to the site of the memorial service we were about to have, down at the other end. This site is between 2 crumbled crematoriums. The IDF rabbi handed me his Sefer Torah to hold and during the march. It was an experience I would surely never forget. It was freezing that day and raining, and Brunia and Gita, our other survivor, never missed a beat. They walked the whole way. It was incredible what they did. So brave. After Auschwitz, we all boarded an Israeli Air Force plane where the celebration really began, anticipating our landing in Israel. This didn't erase the terrible witnessing, but it did help us to marvel at the miracle of the Jewish people and the state of Israel. we landed and sang Am Israeli Chai over and over again and danced and danced and danced and celebrated being on the tarmac in Eretz Israel. We celebrated for 3 days, but stopped in place when the sirens of Yom HaShoah blasted. Finally, it is my fervent prayer that all of you on this Zoom call will consider joining Cliffy, Peter, and I on our next Poland mission that will be scheduled as soon as this pandemic subsides, praise God. I guarantee you this experience will change your lives forever. I guarantee it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Bobby. Rabbi Peter Weintraub, FIDF National Chairman, will now recite a verse from Tehillim.
A psalm for this day of memory, a psalm of hope, a psalm of strength. Psalm 121. Esa shir lama'alot, Esa einai el heharim, me'ayin yavo ezri, Ezri me'im Adonai, Oseh shamayim va'aretz, Al yitein lamot raglecha, Al yanum shomrecha. Hine lo yanum velo yishan, Shomer Yisrael. Adonai shomrecha, Adonai tzilcha, al yad yeminecha. Yomam hashemesh lo yakeka, v'yareach balayla. Adonai yishmarcha mikora, yishmor et nafshecha. Adonai yishmar et seitcha uvowecha, me'ata v'ad olam. A song of ascents. I lift my eyes to the mountains. Where shall my help come? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul, your going, your coming, now and forever.
Thank you, Peter. We now welcome Leon Shear, an Auschwitz survivor from Cleveland, Ohio, who accompanied FIDF on the 2018 Poland-Israel mission. Having never been bar mitzvahed as a teenager because of the Holocaust, Leon was able to celebrate this momentous occasion at the age of 91, surrounded by his FIDF family on an Israeli Air Force airplane mid-flight to the Jewish homeland. Leon, my friend, we're so honored to have you with us today to recite the Kaddish in the memoriam of the 6 million Jews who perished in the Holocaust.
Yiskadal v'yiskadash shemei rabo, v'omei di berei be'etzi, yimlach malchusai b'chayachon, v'yomei choin b'chayo, abdachol beis Yisroa b'agulu, b'zman kurim v'imru mein. Yehei shemei rabo, m'urach v'ulom olmayim. Yisburach v'yistavach, v'yisforfor, v'yistoymat, v'yisnasei, v'yishadar, v'yishalel, v'yisol shema dekuchu baruch hu. La'elomin kol baruchusu, v'shirusu, v'shiprusu, v'nechamusu, v'nimru v'nomomayin. Yehei shlom rabu, min shumayim, v'ayayim uleinu, v'al kol Yisroel v'imomeinu. Oseh shulam v'mrom, v'fi'aseh shulam uleinu, v'al kol Yisroel v'imomeinu.
אל מלא רחמים שוכן במרומים, דיין אלמנות ואבי יתומים, אמצא מנוחה נכונה על כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע, מרים ומזהירים, לנשמות 6 המיליונים אחינו ואחיותינו, רבבות רבבות אלפי ישראל, אנשים, נשים וטף, שנהרגו, שנשחטו, שנשרפו, שנחנקו, שנקברו חיים ושומטו בכל מיני מיתות משונות ואכזריות בידי הגרמנים הנאצים ויוזריהם, ושהלכו לעולמם על קידוש השם, בעבור שאנו מתפללים לעילוי נשמותיהם. לכן בעל הרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, וייצור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם בגן בגן עדן תהא מנוחתם, אדוני הוא נחלתם, וינוחו ושלום על משכבותם, ונאמר אמן.
Thank you, Leon and Shai. Our next guest, Mrs. Bronya Brandman, also participated in FIDF's Poland-Israel mission, the first time she returned to Auschwitz since she was liberated from the camp. Please watch the video to learn a little bit about Bronia's story, followed by her testimony.
All these years, I never ever considered to set foot here again. I considered it a graveyard. I expected it to bring back all the memories. The sun never came out in Birkenau. It was always clouded by the smoke coming out of the chimneys. And you were surrounded by people who were on the verge of dying. At first, I came to Auschwitz with my older sister, Mila. It was the most horrible thing, the waiting to be taken to the gas chamber. How was I going to say goodbye to Mila? Was I going to tell her, I am going to live and she is going to die? They threw Mila to the truck and took her to the gas chamber. I felt myself turning into stone. I think that was emotional death. But coming with the IDF, that is euphoric. That restores my hope and my prayers for a better world for my grandchildren. I come of a family of 8. We lived 18 kilometers from Auschwitz, actually southwest Poland. We also lived close to the German border. We fled our town, which was called Jaworzno, to my uncle's town called Mielec, far away from the border. When the Germans marched in, the first thing they did was burn the synagogue with Jewish pact with Jewish men. Then they went to the slaughterhouse and slaughtered Jews and hung them on meat hooks. I was 8 years old at the time. We eventually returned home. Home became different. We had to sew on Jewish star on every garment, starting with the age of 6. And in the middle of the Jewish star was the word Jude, Jew. If you walked out without it, and that was starting with the age of 6, if you walked out without it, you were shot. We children were thrown out of school. We were basically starving, basically on potatoes, and we hardly had any income because everything was confiscated. By the time I was 9, I became a smuggler. I risked my life every time I went smuggling to supplement our food. Life was horrid. Every day there were emergencies. The Germans would come with trucks and machine guns and order us to assemble. They would pick some people, and those people were never heard from again. By the time I was 11, we were ordered to meet in the schoolyard. We realized it was 1942, that we were going to be murdered. My mother whispered to me to run. I knew, having been a smuggler, that if I ran, a volley of bullets would be directed at me. So I slowly, very reassuringly walked out. The authorities, the guards with the guns, must have been so stunned to just simply someone walking out slowly. No one stopped me. But that was the last time I saw my father and mother and my 13-year-old brother. We were 4 sisters. After I ran, we ran from town, followed by dogs in the middle of the night to the next town called Sosnowiec. We survived a year in Sosnowiec. After the year, which was the summer of 1943, we were all dispatched to Auschwitz. In Auschwitz, I had 2 little sisters, baby sisters. I had an older sister, Mila, 8 years older, my idol. I thought she was the perfect human being. Dr. Mengele pointed the 3 of us to the line going to the gas chamber. He pointed Mila to a line going to the 4th labor camp of Auschwitz. Having been used to running and hiding, I decided in an instant to run to my sister's line, which made me one of a million children being on Mila's. I say million, 900 was the transport, made me one child remaining in Auschwitz. My 2 baby sisters went to the gas chamber alone. In Auschwitz, we were told to strip naked, and then our hair was shaved by men, and my hand was tattooed. I have a number on my hand. I don't think it's visible on the screen. No matter how I hold it, it's not visible. I received 1 tattered dress, no underwear, and 1 pair of wooden clogs, no socks, and a bowl, a tin bowl. And these were my sole possessions for the next 2 years. I became a non-human. I was defined and called by the number on my hands. I will not describe Auschwitz. It is too horrible. One normal mind cannot begin to grasp it. what a day in Auschwitz meant. And we knew we will never come out of Auschwitz alive. The only way out of Auschwitz was through the chimney in smoke. I was 12 when I came to Auschwitz. No sooner, by the way, that one dress that we received, I slept in that dress. It wasn't washed for months. I couldn't drink the Auschwitz water. I would come down with dysentery. I just said that I wouldn't describe Auschwitz. It's just too tempting, yet we do not have the time for it. Mila came down with typhus. We were covered by lice, and lice breed disease, and Mila came down with typhus. She was forced to enter the Revier. The Revier was barracks reserved for the sick. I went with Mila, knowing that going to the Revier, you did not come back. And one day, the head of the barrack, named Boženka, a Slovakian Jewish nurse, who came on a transfer a year before me, she came on a transport of 1,000. By the time I met Boženka, only 3 survived. Boženka told me that all of the sick, nobody, by the way, was taking care of the sick, would be dispatched to the gas chamber. She told the authorities that I was her sister, saving me, and transferred me to a Christian barrack. Boženka saved my life at the risk of dying herself. You never knew what the Germans would answer her. They might easily have said, then go with your sister. How was I going to return to Mila? What was I going to say to Mila? Was I going to tell her that she is going to the gas chamber and I will live? I could not face Mila. What would I have done if it happened today? I don't know. I wanted to live. And I could not see my sister dying. I have never forgiven myself for not saying goodbye to Mila. After that, I came down with typhus. Boženka was helping me again. When Mengele put my number down on the list going to the gas chamber, she urged me to run after him to ask him for my life. I refused to speak to that butcher. Boženka would not give up until she saw me approaching him. And just as I spoke to Mengele, the Allies who refused to bomb Auschwitz, even though they had a successful escapee who spelled everything out, even though I would have been glad to be hit by a bomb, it would have meant that I lived, that I died for a cause not for nothing. But that particular time, as I was approaching Mengele, the Allies were circling over Auschwitz in a reconnaissance flight. Mengele didn't know that, and he was deathly afraid of air raids. And because he felt so vulnerable at the moment, as he ran to the car for safety, he called to his assistant to remove my number from the list, which I'm told has never happened before or since. I will just go to the end, and believe me, what I'm leaving out, what I have said, is nothing. But at the end, a month before liberation, no, I wouldn't say liberation. Yes, it was liberation because Poland was winning in Poland. No, Russia was winning in Poland, and they were about to liberate Auschwitz. And we knew the Germans are not going to let us live. But how were they going to die? By that time, the crematoria were ordered to be demolished. I was in a coma from typhus a month before the death march. I woke up 2 days before the death march. If you slow down marching, you are shot. I had survived 5.5 years of the Holocaust. I saw the war ending. I did not want to die then. I wanted to live. I had survived that long. Boženka came to the rescue again. She carried me. So obviously I'm here. When, by the way, she didn't carry me when I walked. She was helping people in front and back. So I made it to Germany. We were freed by the army in May 1945. Where was I going to go? To whom was I going to go? They murdered my mother's 11 siblings and their spouses and their children. They murdered my neighbors. They murdered my friends. I felt myself alone in the world. It took months before I learned that my brother survived. While all these heinous crimes were perpetrated against Jews, they murdered 6 million. Can one imagine? Can one begin to comprehend? 6 million murdered. They destroyed our 3,500 years of civilization, of unprecedented civilization. If one knows the Torah, we know how beautiful those laws were so many years ago. We are the only ones who survived. And the whole world knew that. 1.5 million innocent children whose blood was spilled on the sidewalk, whose heads were hit against the sidewalk to spill their blood, were perished. How do you mourn 1.5 million children? And who knows? There could have been another Einstein there, or a Salk, or a Freud. There could have been a coronavirus expert there who would have stopped it. And they were perished, and the world does not even know it. And in my time, anti-Semitism is blooming, not by the fascists, only by the fascists, and the far left, and the far right, and the progressive, and the campuses, and Israel, little Israel, the only democracy in the Far East, is being demonized in all our major institutions. Our European liberals, our American liberals, where we are all born free, where we have contributed. How do we thank the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, for daily spilling their blood? There is no family in Israel which is not affected. How do we thank them? Are there words enough to thank them for spilling their young blood to defend Israel and to defend all the Jews so we can live? In my own lifetime, how sad is that people don't realize the truth? They don't even know about it. On that, I will conclude. I was given limited time. And I hope we all take stock of who we are, where we are. Hitler defines us as one grandparent who is a Jew, makes the grandchildren Jewish and ready for the gas chamber. So I hope we take heed. This is Yom HaShoah Day. I will say again, it's a subject not to enjoy ourselves, but it is the truth. Bye.
Bronya, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. If I only could give you a big, big hug from here, from Israel. I welcome back Cantor Shai Abramson to sing Eli Eli, written by Hannah Senesh. Hannah left her home in Budapest in 1939 to Palestine and volunteered in the British Army as a paratrooper. In June 1944, in the midst of the mass deportation of the Hungarian Jews to Auschwitz, Hannah entered Hungary, where she was caught, tortured, and put on trial. By November, she was set to be executed by firing squad. She was only 23 years of age.
Eli, Eli, שלא ייגמר לעולם, החול והים, רישוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת האדם, החול והים, רישוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת האדם. אלי, אלי, שלא ייגמר לעולם, החול והים, רישוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת האדם, החול והים, רישוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת האדם, החול והים, רישוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת האדם.
Thank you, Shai. It is my honor to introduce Captain Sarah. Captain Sarah is a survivor in her own right, as she survived the terror attack in Jerusalem on January 8, 2017. As the granddaughter of a Holocaust survivor and a participant of the FIDF from Holocaust to Independence mission, we are honored to have with us today. Please welcome Captain Sarah.
Yes. Shalom to all. I am very honored to join you on this very meaningful and special day. I am 30 years old and live in Tel Aviv. I serve as a captain in the IDF, and I have been proudly serving for the past 4.5 years. My dad made Aliyah at the age of 18 from Philadelphia. He decided that as a son of a Holocaust survivor, of my Opa Paul, a survivor of the Sachsenhausen camp in Germany, it's his obligation to join the IDF, where he served as a tanker. My Opa spent 6 years in a concentration camp in Germany in very difficult conditions. After the war, he built his life in the US and had a family of 3 children and 14 grandchildren, 6 of which now live in Israel. On January 8, 2017, during my IDF officer training, while touring the promenade of Armon HaNetziv in Jerusalem, a terrorist drove his truck into the crowd, killing 4 of my friends and injuring 7 of us. I only have a very blurred memory of myself waking up to what I remember as silence. I later discovered I was hurt by a terrorist who wanted to kill Israeli soldiers only because that is who we are. I dislocated and broke my left shoulder. I suffered internal tendon tears, and my right leg had a traumatic blow that caused internal bleeding and swelling. I retain a scar reminding me daily that what happened almost 3 years ago was real. One day during my 7 month of rehabilitation, my mom said to me, "Camplers are survivors." And she added that I have the strength to get through my injury since I survived just like my Opa did. A year ago today, I was privileged to join a FIDF delegation to Poland together with 50 IDF officers 2 Holocaust survivors, and the rest of the delegation. How can I describe what I was feeling? Could the 6 million Jews murdered during the Holocaust have imagined that one day proud uniformed Israeli soldiers would stand in the camps, stand proud to protect the Jewish nation and people, and to reassure that the Jews will never again be hopeless and unprotected? It was so powerful and so overwhelming. Going back to Israel to my soldiers and sharing my experiences with them is something I will never forget. I'm reminded of how my grandfather, Opa, Paul Kampler, would say that the thriving Jewish people of Israel marks the true defeat of Hitler. My friends were killed for being Jewish too. But now we have a country and we have an army, and they promise to keep going. Am Yisrael Chai. Thank you very much for listening.
It's a victory for me to be here. Never expected those days that I be able to survive. We're having a homeland and coming back here as a free person with the Israeli army. That's to me is a victory.
FIDF was established about 40 years ago by Holocaust survivors with the vision of supporting IDF soldiers to ensure the existence of the State of Israel as the safe home of the Jewish people wherever they may be.
Between 1939 and 1945, 6 million Jews were murdered by the Nazis and their collaborators.
If I remember that moment, seeing my mother with the baby in the hand, going into fire or going into gas.
We are proud to enter this cursed place while marching with you at the lead. You won. You, the Holocaust heroes. On behalf of the whole delegation, I salute you.
Sinim, Atzda!
At the time we are facing a new wave of anti-Semitic spreading around the world, we are here to say clearly and loudly, enough is enough. Never again. We as the Jewish people are no more voiceless, defendless, or stateless. Today, we have our Jewish homeland, the great state of Israel. We have our protectors, our guardians, one of the best military in the world, the Israeli Defense Force. And today we have the power and the will to protect ourselves against all those who seek our destruction. Am Yisrael Chai.
Thank you, Captain Sarah, for sharing your personal story. I would like now to invite National Director and CEO, Major General Meir Cliffy Amir.
Dear friends, for the past 5 years, I have had the tremendous honor of spending Yom HaShoah surrounded by heroism. The heroic survivors of the Shoah, like Brunia and Leon, accompanied by 45 heroic IDF officers in uniform and with FIDF members as part of the FIDF from Holocaust to Independence mission. Marching through the gates of Auschwitz our heads held high, tall and proud, carrying the flag of the State of Israel, was one of the most powerful and meaningful moments of my life. It was a sense of victory, declaring, "We are here, Am Israel Chai." Sadly, this year, we cannot share in this life-changing journey, standing side by side with our heroes like Brunia and Leon, and experiencing the transformation from the darkness of the Holocaust to the light of the State of Israel. Brunia, Leon, being with each of you during one of our mission, listening to your testimony at the barrack in Auschwitz, trying to understand the bravery, the willpower, and faith that a human being needs to have to survive those horrors is an inspiration to all of us. And for me and for us, you are real heroes. My dear friends, today we stand here strong and united. One proud community of survivors, IDF officers, and so many friends of the IDF, filled with pride in how the Jewish people, raised from the ashes, survived and established the State of Israel, our independent homeland. And I can say that it's not that we only survived. We accomplished. We built a beautiful country. We have our protectors, one of the best military in the world, with the highest morale and code of ethics in the world. And friends, against all odds, next week we'll celebrate our 72 years of independence, living as a free country, as a free people. As we close out this very special and emotional event, let us also be committed to never forget so we can ensure never again. As the American writer James Fenimore Cooper said, and I'm quote, "Those who do not learn from their history have been condemned to experience it again." For our families, for our children, for our future, together we will declare, Am Israel Chai.
Thank you, General Cliffy, for your inspiring words. Please rise for the singing of Israeli national anthem, Hatikva.
Hatikva
Our memorial ceremony is now concluded. Thank you for joining us. Shalom.